My family said there was no space for my 6-year-old after an earthquake left us homeless, even though my sister's boyfriend had an entire den for his work calls, and the basement was still a game room. Ruby stood on their porch crying like she was sorry for existing and said, "I'll be good, Grandma." That was the moment I stopped being the daughter who swallowed everything. I walked away in silence, checked into an $89 motel, and opened the old property records they thought I'd forgotten. By the end of that week, the house they refused my child from would become the reason their lies started collapsing. Chapter 1. No Space for My Daughter. The earthquake hit just after 5 on a gray March afternoon while Ruby was sitting at the kitchen table coloring a fox with purple ears. At first, I thought it was one of the heavy trucks that sometimes rolled past our street in Napa County, rattling the old windows in my little bungalow. Then the floor kicked sideways. The cabinet doors burst open. A coffee mug dropped from the counter and shattered against the tile. The sound was sharp enough to make Ruby scream. I grabbed the edge of the table with one hand and reached for her with the other. "Stay under the table, baby. Cover your head." She slid down so fast, her crayons scattered across the floor. Her stuffed fox, Finn, was clutched tight against her chest, one orange ear pressed under her chin. The walls made a sound I had never heard before, a deep wooden groan, like the house itself was trying not to cry out. It lasted less than a minute. It felt long enough to split my life into before and after. When the shaking stopped, dust floated through the kitchen light. A crack ran from the corner of the living room window down toward the baseboard, thin but ugly, like someone had drawn it there with a knife. The back door sat crooked in its frame. A row of plates lay dead on the floor. Ruby stood in the hallway, barefoot, trembling. "Mom, is our house broken?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to kneel down and make it small, the way mothers are supposed to make impossible things small. Instead, I crossed the room, lifted her into my arms, and kissed her hair. "It's okay. We're okay." That was the second lie I told her that night. My name is Elowen Mercer. I was 36 years old, a county child welfare social worker with Napa County Family Services, and I was used to emergencies. I had sat in hospital rooms with children who would not speak. I had filled out removal paperwork at 2 in the morning. I had learned how to keep my voice steady when everything around me was falling apart. But it is different when the child looking at you is yours. Ruby was 6, small for her age, a first grader at Redwood Valley Elementary, and my daughter in every way that mattered, including the legal one. The adoption papers were in a fireproof folder in my bedroom closet, right beside her birth certificate, her medical forms, and the drawing she had made the day the judge told us we were officially a family. That night, she slept in my bed with Finn tucked between us. Every aftershock made her flinch. Every creak made me whisper my name. By morning, a city inspector in a yellow vest stood in my living room, staring at the crack by the window and the shifted frame of the back door. He walked slowly, took photos, checked the foundation, and said very little. That was how I knew it was bad. When he finally stepped outside, he pressed a red tag against my front door. "Unsafe to occupy until structural review and repair." The words looked flat and official. They did not care that Ruby's favorite pajamas were inside. They did not care that I still owed a small mortgage on the place. They did not care that insurance would take time, contractors would take longer, and my daughter needed somewhere to sleep tonight. Ruby stood beside me on the walkway, wearing her blue jacket over pajamas, Finn tucked under one arm. "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby." Second lie. I had some savings, but not enough to float weeks of hotels, repairs, food, gas, and missed work. I had emergency leave, but Napa County Family Services was always short-staffed, and the cases did not pause because my life had cracked open. I could already imagine Andrea from HR sending careful emails about documentation and return dates. So, I did what people do when the ground gives way beneath them. I called my mother. Marianne Mercer picked up on the second ring. She was 64, retired from a string of part-time office jobs she never stayed in long enough to dislike, and she had a way of making concern sound polished. "Elowen, honey, are you all right?" I looked at Ruby, who was trying to brush dust off her Finn's fur. "The house got red tagged. We can't stay here until it's repaired. I need somewhere for a few days, maybe longer, just until I figure this out." There was a soft intake of breath on the other end. "Of course, honey. You can come." I closed my eyes. Relief moved through me so quickly it almost hurt. "Thank you, Mom." I did not ask if "you can come" included Ruby. I did not ask whether my 6-year-old daughter was welcome in the same house where my mother grew up, the same house where my mother hosted Thanksgiving with matching napkins, the same house she called family property whenever taxes or repairs came due. I did not think I had to. My parents lived in Santa Rosa, in a 2-story house with a wide porch and a maple tree out front. My father, Walter, was 67 and retired from managing a hardware store. My older sister, Brielle, 38, had moved back after her second separation, bringing her 3 kids along with her, Maddie, Connor, and Paisley. Brielle's boyfriend, Derek, Nolan, had also somehow become part of the household, though no one could explain what he contributed except opinions and a closed door to the den he called his home office. It was crowded, yes, but crowded is not the same as closed. I packed fast, clothes for Ruby, her allergy medicine, the adoption folder, my laptop, chargers, granola bars, a toothbrush with a unicorn handle. Ruby rode in her back seat when I buckled her into the back seat. "Is Grandma's house big?" "Big enough," I said. The words tasted strange. Because I knew that house. I knew the hallway that smelled like lemon polish. I knew the upstairs bedroom where Brielle's trophies still had more shelf space than I ever did. I knew the converted laundry room where I had slept as a child, because, according to my mother, Elowen doesn't need much space. The drive should have taken a little over an hour, maybe 90 minutes on a bad day. After the quake, it took almost 3. Highway 12 had detours. Parts of 101 were backed up with utility trucks, insurance vehicles, and drivers moving slowly because everyone had become suspicious of bridges. Ruby stayed quiet most of the way, both hands wrapped around Finn. "Do you think Grandma will be happy to see me?" I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Of course." Third lie. We pulled into my parents' driveway just after sunset. The porch light was on, warm and yellow, the way it always had been when I came home for holidays. For one foolish second, I let myself feel safe. My mother opened the door before I knocked. "Elowen, you made it!" Her smile was soft. Then her eyes moved past my shoulder. Ruby stood behind me, with Finn pressed to her chest. My mother's smile froze. "Oh," she said, "you brought her." I almost laughed because I thought there had to be a joke hiding somewhere. "Of course I brought her. She's 6. Mom's hand tightened around the edge of the door. "We thought it would just be you." The air changed so quickly I felt it before I understood it. "What?" She looked over her shoulder into the house, then back at me. "Honey, the house is very full right now. Brielle's here with the kids. Derek is using the den for work. The basement is set up as the kids' game room. Maddie has testing this week. Connor doesn't sleep well when routines change. And Paisley's allergies are acting up." Every word was reasonable. Every word was polished. Every word was cruel. From inside, I heard a burst of video game noise. Connor ran past the hallway with a controller in his hand. Maddie appeared at the top of the stairs in clean pajamas. Paisley darted behind her carrying a stuffed unicorn twice the size of Finn. The sofa in the living room sat empty, two folded throws over the back like display pieces. A door down the hall was closed. Derek's voice came through it. "I really do have calls early." I looked at my mother. "There's a couch." Marianne's expression tightened. "It's not that simple." Ruby shifted behind my leg. "I can sleep on the floor," she whispered. "I won't take much room." Something inside my chest went very still. My mother bent slightly, smiling the way adults smile at children when they want credit for being gentle. "Sweetheart, it's not about being good, it's just a full house." Brielle appeared behind her, blonde hair smooth, water glass in hand, looking like she had been waiting for her cue. "Eloan, don't make this dramatic. It's just not a good time for your little situation." Your little situation. Ruby's fingers dug into my coat. My father stood in the hallway behind them, gray-haired, tired-looking, one hand on the banister. He heard everything. I know he did. His eyes met mine for half a second, then slid away. "Maybe we should all calm down," he said. But he did not say, "Let the child in." He did not say, "She can sleep in the living room." He did not say, "This is family." Marianne exhaled, as if I was the one making things hard. "You can stay, Eloan, not her." The sentence landed clean. No confusion, no misunderstanding, no room for mercy. Ruby started crying then. Not loudly. That would have been easier. She cried like she was trying to apologize for the sound. "I'll be good, Grandma." I had heard children beg before. I had heard them plead with judges, foster parents, mothers too tired to mother, and fathers too angry to listen. But hearing my own daughter beg for a patch of floor from the woman who raised me changed something in me at the root. I had forgiven them for making me feel unwanted. I would not forgive them for making my daughter feel disposable. I zipped Ruby's jacket to her chin and smoothed one sleeve down. "Come on, baby." My mother blinked. "Eloan, don't be difficult." I looked at her, then at Brielle, then at my father, who still said nothing. "Noted." That was all I said. I did not slam the door, I did not shout, I did not give Brielle the scene she wanted or Marianne the proof that I was unstable. I took Ruby's hand and walked back down the porch steps while the game sounds kept leaking from the basement and Derek stayed safely behind his office door. In the car, Ruby buckled herself with shaking hands. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby." "If I'm quieter, can Grandma let us come back?" I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. "We're going somewhere else." "Where?" "Somewhere with space." The motel off Highway 101 had a flickering sign, a tired clerk, and a room for $89 a night. The carpet smelled damp. The air conditioner rattled. The bedspread was thin and faded at the edges. Ruby sat on the mattress, still wearing her jacket, thin in her lap. "Am I not family?" I sat beside her and pulled her into my arms. "I am your family, every bit of you." She fell asleep with one hand twisted in my shirt, like she was afraid I might leave if she let go. I stayed awake, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, shaped almost like a fault line. My phone buzzed. Marianne wrote, "Please don't punish us for being practical." A minute later, Brielle wrote, "You always make everything about you." No one asked if Ruby had stopped crying. No one asked where we were. No one asked if the little girl they had just turned away had a blanket, a toothbrush, or dinner. I did not answer. Instead, I opened my banking app. There it was, scheduled for the end of the week, the automatic transfer I had sent for years. $250. Mercer House Maintenance. A family contribution, my mother used to call it. A small way to help with repairs, taxes, upkeep. A small way, I realized now, to keep paying rent on the hope that one day they might make room for me. Then I remembered something I had buried so deeply I almost believed it did not matter. When I was 18, my grandfather left me a one-third interest in that house. My parents had called it family paperwork. They told me not to worry about it, that the house was still the family home, that I should focus on college and let them handle the grown-up details. I stared at the transfer glowing on my screen. If that house had no space for my daughter, why was I still paying to keep it standing? Ruby shifted in her sleep behind me, her small fist still curled around my shirt. I did not cancel the transfer that night. Not yet. But sitting in that cheap motel room with my daughter asleep beside me and my family's messages lighting up my phone like little sparks of blame, I felt something in me go quiet. Not broken, quiet. And for the first time in my life, I stopped wondering how to earn a place in that family. I started wondering what my name was still doing on their deed. Morning came in the color of old dishwater, pale and tired through the motel curtains. Ruby was already awake when I opened my eyes. She sat on the edge of the other bed with Finn in her lap, her small knees pressed together, her socks twisted at the toes. She was not crying anymore. Somehow, that made it worse. Crying would have meant the hurt was still moving. This quiet felt like it had settled into her bones. I sat up slowly. "Hey, baby, did you sleep at all?" She nodded, but not like she meant it. The motel heater clicked on with a dusty rattle. Outside, cars hissed along wet pavement. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I wanted to wrap her up, carry her somewhere safe, and erase the sound of my mother's voice saying, "Not her." But mothers do not get that kind of power. We only get the next right thing. So I helped Ruby brush her teeth in the tiny bathroom, washed dust from her cheeks, and finger-combed her hair into something close to neat. Then I took her downstairs to the lobby where a small breakfast counter had cereal dispensers, bruised bananas, wrapped muffins, and a plastic pitcher of orange juice sitting in a tray of melting ice. Ruby looked up at me before touching anything. "Can I take orange juice, or is that too much?" I stopped with my hand halfway to a paper cup. There are moments when a child says something so small that it opens a wound you did not know was still bleeding. She had lost her house yesterday. She had been turned away by her grandmother. She had slept in a motel with a rattling heater and a lock I checked 3 times. And now she was afraid a half cup of orange juice might be too much. I picked up the cup and filled it almost to the top. "You can have orange juice. You can have a muffin. You can have breakfast, Ruby. You never have to apologize for needing breakfast." She watched my face carefully, like she was checking for hidden rules. "Okay." She took the cup with both hands and drank only half. Then she picked a blueberry muffin, broke it in two, and wrapped one half in a napkin. "For later," she said. I knew that move. I knew the quiet math behind it. Save some, take less, leave no mess, become easy enough that no one sends you away. I had learned it in the Mercer house long before Ruby was born. I grew up in that 2-story house in Santa Rosa with the maple tree out front and the porch light my mother kept polished like it proved something. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. Holiday wreaths, clean gutters, school photos lined up on the mantel. Inside, there was always a favorite, and it was never me. Brielle was the sun in our house. She was louder, prettier, needier, and somehow that made her more deserving of everything. She had the bigger bedroom with the window seat, the dance recital photos in the hallway, the new comforter every time she changed her mind about colors. I had the converted laundry room, a narrow bed pushed against the wall where the old dryer hookup still stuck out behind a bookshelf. My mother used to say, "You're easier, Elowen. You don't need as much." She said it like praise. My father used to say Brielle had big feelings, so we had to be patient with her. If she threw a tantrum, she was overwhelmed. If I got quiet, I was being difficult. If Brielle forgot something, we rearranged the day. If I needed something, I learned to need it later. When Ruby whispered she could sleep on the floor, I did not just hear my daughter. I heard myself at 9 years old telling my mother I could do homework on top of the dryer because Brielle needed the kitchen table for a poster project. I heard every version of me that had tried to take up less air. At 18, I won a scholarship and left Santa Rosa with 2 duffel bags and no dramatic goodbye. Around that same time, my grandfather's estate was settled. I remember my parents sitting me down at the dining room table with papers spread out between them. They told me Grandpa had left me a 1/3 interest in the Mercer house, but they said it gently, vaguely, like it was a symbolic thing. Family paperwork, my mother called it. We'll handle the house, my father said. You focus on school. And because I was 18, exhausted from a lifetime of being told not to make trouble, I believed them. Or maybe I wanted to. Maybe it was easier to think of the deed as just another adult detail than to admit I owned part of a place that never felt like it belonged to me. I studied social work because I wanted systems to make sense. I wanted to understand why some children were protected and others were trained to disappear. I told myself I chose that field because I was practical, because I liked structure, because I could stay calm in crisis. But the truth was simpler. I wanted to become the adult I had needed when I was a child. That is how I met Ruby. In 2021, I was assigned to a case involving Trina Wells, 29, a woman with tired eyes, 2 DUIs, and a life held together with temporary jobs and missed appointments. Ruby was barely more than a toddler then, all curls and solemn eyes, the kind of child who studied every adult before deciding if it was safe to breathe normally. She liked crayons, she liked quiet voices, she liked sitting close without being grabbed. The first time I brought her a purple marker, she held it like I had given her jewelry. I knew the rules. Social workers are not supposed to blur lines. We are not supposed to confuse compassion with attachment. So when I realized I was thinking about Ruby after work, wondering if Trina had remembered dinner, wondering if Ruby still had the little purple cup she carried everywhere, I went to Janet Ruiz, my supervisor, and told her the truth. I can't be objective anymore. Janet looked at me for a long time. Then she transferred Ruby's case to another worker. That mattered. It still matters. I did not take Ruby from a file cabinet because I loved her. I did not bend the system because I knew the language. When Trina disappeared months later, first missing 1 visit, then 2, then leaving the state entirely, Ruby went into emergency foster care. Only after that, when no qualified relative came forward, did I apply like anyone else. Background check, home study, training on childhood trauma, interviews, court dates, questions about income, support systems, discipline, safety plans. Strangers opened my cabinets and looked at my smoke detectors. They asked me why I wanted to foster a child who had already learned not to expect people to stay. Because someone should, I wanted to say. Instead, I gave the official answers. In 2022, Ruby came to live with me. She arrived with 2 trash bags of clothes, 1 pair of shoes that pinched her toes, and Finn, the stuffed fox with 1 loose eye. The first night, she slept with her shoes beside the bed. The second night, she asked if she could put her toothbrush in the cup by the sink. By the 3rd month, she accidentally called me Mama during a fever and then cried because she thought she had done something wrong. I held her until her breathing slowed. You can call me that whenever you want. The adoption became final in 2023. The judge smiled when she said we were legally mother and daughter. I thought I would cry. Instead, I felt something settle in me, like a door closing against the cold. Ruby drew a picture afterward of the 2 of us standing under a yellow sun. She wrote family in crooked letters across the top. My parents did not come to the hearing. Marianne said the adoption was unexpected. Walter asked if I was sure about raising someone else's child alone. Brielle texted 3 heart emojis and nothing else. Still, I tried. God help me, I tried. I took Ruby to Santa Rosa for birthdays and holidays because I wanted her to have grandparents, cousins, the kind of ordinary family noise I had once confused with love. Ruby drew pictures for Marianne, who accepted them with a tight smile and usually placed them under a stack of mail. Marianne hugged Ruby in photos, but rarely when no one was looking. Once, driving home after Thanksgiving, Ruby asked from the back seat, "Does Grandma hug me only when people can see?" I said, "Grandma's just shy." Another lie. A smaller one maybe, but still a lie. Back in the motel lobby, Ruby finished half her orange juice and tucked the muffin into her jacket pocket. I knew then we could not stay there another night. Not because the room was dirty or expensive, though it was both, because Ruby was already learning the wrong lesson from it. I called Simone Ellis from the parking lot. Simone was 39, a senior case supervisor, and one of the few people in my life who never made kindness feel like a debt. She listened without interrupting while I told her about the red tag, the drive, my mother's face, Brielle's little situation, Ruby asking if she was family. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Simone said, "Get out of that motel. I have a room, and if that's not enough, I'll make one." I tried to say I did not want to impose. She cut me off. Kids don't take space. Adults make space. An hour later, Ruby and I were driving towards Simone's house outside Davis. The sky had cleared by then, but everything felt unsteady. Ruby held Finn in her lap and watched the road like she was trying to memorize escape routes. Simone opened the door before we knocked. She did not ask for explanations in front of Ruby. She just crouched down and said, "You must be Ruby. Olivia has been waiting to show you where the crayons are." Olivia Ellis, 8 years old, appeared barefoot behind her mother and smiled like welcoming a strange child after a disaster was the most natural thing in the world. "Want to see my room?" Ruby looked at me first. I nodded. "You can show her." Olivia gave Ruby a corner of her bookshelf, a folded blanket, and a small plastic bin for Finn and whatever Ruby wanted to keep nearby. When Ruby set Finn carefully on the pillow and then reached to pick him back up, Olivia said, "He can stay there too." Ruby stared at her. "He can?" "Sure, he looks tired." I had to turn away for a second. That afternoon, Ruby played with Olivia on the rug, but every few minutes she gathered the markers, stacked the papers, and tucked Finn back into her backpack. Olivia finally laughed softly and said, "You don't have to clean up every time." Ruby lowered her eyes. "I don't want to be too much." Simone heard it from the kitchen. Our eyes met over the counter. We did not have to say anything. Children do not invent that fear on their own. Someone teaches them to it. Work called before dinner. Andrea Pike from HR used her careful voice, the way people use when they want to sound sympathetic without promising anything. Napa County Family Services was short-staffed. Emergency leave needed documentation. They understood the earthquake had affected many employees, but they needed an estimated return date. I gave her what I could. Janet Ruiz called 20 minutes later, gentler but still direct. "Take care of Ruby," she said, "and keep every document, the red tag, the motel receipt, anything from your family if they start making claims. Also, remember, Ruby's adoption was clean, transferred case, separate worker, full home study, court approval. If anyone tries to twist that, we have records." I thanked her, and for the first time all day, I felt the ground under me hold. That night, Ruby slept in Olivia's room. Sometime after midnight, she padded into the hallway and found me at Simone's kitchen table with my laptop open. "If Grandma doesn't have room, do we still have a home?" she whispered. I pulled her into my lap. I'm going to make sure we do." After she fell asleep again, I stayed at the table. Simone had gone to bed. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator hum and the soft tick of a wall clock. I opened old email folders I had not touched in years: estate paperwork, property tax notices, maintenance transfers, scanned documents my father had once sent with the subject line, "For your records," though no one had ever explained what I was supposed to do with them. Then I found it, a deed record from Sonoma County. Elowyn Mercer, tenant in common, 1/3 interest in the Mercer family residence, Santa Rosa, California. I read the line once, then again. The house that had no space for my daughter still had my name on it. I opened my banking app and found the scheduled transfer: $250, Mercer House Maintenance. For years, I had told myself it was for repairs, taxes, little things my parents couldn't manage alone. But sitting there in Simone's kitchen, with Ruby asleep under a roof that did not belong to blood, but felt more like family than anything I had known, I understood what that money had really been. A fee. A quiet little fee I paid every month for the hope that one day they would make room for me. I canceled the transfer. One tap, no shouting, no speech, just the end of a payment on a lie. Then I saved the deed to my desktop, backed it up to my drive, and searched for estate litigation attorneys in Sonoma County. One name came up twice, then 3 times: Vivian Franklin. I filled out the contact form before I could talk myself out of it. When I finally closed the laptop, the kitchen window reflected my face back at me. I looked tired. I looked scared, but beneath that, for the first time since my mother opened that door and saw Ruby as a problem, I saw something else. Not anger, clarity. Chapter 3. 1/3 of the house. By 7 in the morning, Simone was already making coffee, moving around her kitchen in sweatpants and a faded UC Davis hoodie, like opening her home to a displaced friend and a frightened child was just another Tuesday. I was still at the table, laptop open, the deed saved in 3 different places. The words 1/3 interest kept pulling my eyes back, as if they might disappear if I stopped looking. Simone set a mug beside me. "Did you sleep?" "A little." "You're lying." "Comes with motherhood." She glanced at the laptop, then at the banking app still open on my phone. The canceled transfer sat there, final and strangely quiet. "For years," I said, "I thought that money was helping with repairs, roof patches, plumbing, property tax, whatever they said needed handling." Simone sat across from me. "And now?" "Now I think it was a membership fee for a family that never really let me in." Saying it out loud should have hurt more. Instead, it made the room feel sharper, more honest. I had not canceled the transfer because I wanted revenge. I canceled it because I was done paying for the illusion that loyalty only flowed one way. Ruby and Olivia were still asleep down the hall. Finn had been granted a spot on Olivia's pillow, a privilege Ruby had accepted with solemn gratitude. I kept thinking about how easily Olivia had made room. No committee meeting, no family votes, no adult man needing a den more than a child needed a bed. Simone wrapped both hands around her coffee. "You need a lawyer." "I filled out a contact form last night." "Good." "I don't even know what I want yet." "You want your daughter safe." That was the first answer that made sense. By noon, I had an appointment with Vivian Franklin, an estate litigation attorney in Sonoma County. Her office sat on the 2nd floor of a brick building that looked too old for elevators and too expensive for mistakes. Vivian was 55, with silver-threaded dark hair, rimless glasses, and the kind of calm that did not invite performance. She did not gasp when I explained. She did not tell me how terrible my family was. She simply read. The deed, the estate transfer, the old property tax notices, the maintenance transfers, my grandfather's name, my name. After 15 minutes, she looked up. You are a tenant in common. I know what the words say, I don't know what they mean. It means you own an undivided 1/3 interest in the property, not a bedroom, not a symbolic corner, a legal share of the whole asset. But I don't live there. You don't have to. My parents do. My sister and her kids do. That gives them occupancy. It does not erase your ownership. I stared at the file on her desk. The pages looked harmless, thin white paper, black ink. Yet somehow they made the porch, the sofa, the den, the basement, all of it rearrange in my mind. Vivian tapped the deed once. If they want to keep the house, they can buy out your share at fair market value. If they refuse or cannot, you can petition for partition. The court can order a sale and divide proceeds after debts and costs. The word sale landed hard. I don't want to destroy my parents. Vivian did not soften her voice. I appreciated that. You don't own a memory. You own 1/3 of a legal asset, and they've been treating your share like free storage for their lives. I looked down at my hands. That house belonged to my grandfather before it belonged to them, and now 1/3 of it belongs to you. For a moment, I was 18 again, sitting at the dining room table while my parents told me not to worry about adult details. I saw my mother sliding papers into a folder, my father telling me to focus on college, Brielle upstairs, music playing too loud, already certain the house would always bend around her needs. Vivian leans back. What happened that made you come here today? I told her, not all of it, not the whole history, but enough. The earthquake, the red tag, Ruby standing on the porch with Finn, my mother saying I could stay but not her, Ruby whispering that she could sleep on the floor, the motel, the orange juice. Vivian's pen stopped moving for the first time. Then she said, "We begin with notice, not war. Notice." She drafted the letter that afternoon. It was formal, controlled, almost cold. A demand for buyout of my 1/3 interest based on independent appraisal, or, failing that, notice of intent to file a partition action in Sonoma County Superior Court. It included proof of ownership, a deadline to respond, and instructions that all further communication about the property should go through counsel. No insults, no accusations, no mention of Ruby crying on the porch. Just paper. Certified mail went out the next morning. My phone started ringing before lunch. Mom appeared first. I let it ring twice, then answered because some part of me still wanted to hear a different woman on the other end. "Aloan, what have you done?" Her voice shook, but underneath the fear was the same old control. "I hired an attorney." "You sent a legal threat to your own parents." "I sent notice about property I legally own." "Because of one uncomfortable night?" My fingers tightened around the phone. It was not uncomfortable. It was cruel. That's unfair. No, Mom, making a 6-year-old cry on your porch after an earthquake was unfair. A pause. "Ruby is young. She'll forget." "No. Children don't forget being unwanted. They learn to make themselves smaller." Mom inhaled sharply. "You're punishing elderly parents." "I'm asking you to buy what you've been using." The phone rustled. My father's voice came on, lower, tired. "Aloan, let's not escalate this." "I didn't start the escalation. I just documented it." I hung up before he could turn my pain into a family meeting. Brielle called 20 minutes later. I almost did not answer, but I wanted to know what version of outrage she had chosen. She did not disappoint. "Are you insane?" "Good afternoon to you too." "You're trying to make Mom and Dad homeless." "I'm asking them to address my legal ownership. You don't live here. My name is on the deed. Because Grandpa made some sentimental mistake 20 years ago. He left me a legal interest. You always wanted to make us look bad." I almost laughed. "Brielle, you told a child there was no room for her while your boyfriend had an office." Derek works from home. Derek sells motivational templates on LinkedIn. Don't you dare talk about him. Then don't talk about Ruby. Ruby doesn't understand adult issues. Ruby understood the word not. Brielle's breath sharpened. This is all over your little... Finish that sentence, I said very softly, and every conversation after this goes through Vivian Franklin. For once, Brielle stopped talking. I ended the call. That evening, her Facebook posts began. Some people forget who raised them. Money changes people. Pray for my parents. No one should have to fear losing their home because of greed. By bedtime, there was another one. Family should never be made homeless over bitterness. She did not mention the earthquake. She did not mention the red tag. She did not mention Ruby standing on the porch with Finn. She did not mention no space. A cousin commented that I had always been cold. An aunt wrote that elder abuse comes in many forms. Someone I had not seen since high school posted praying hands and said, "Your poor mom." My hands shook while I read it. Not because I was surprised, because part of me still wanted to defend myself to people who had already chosen a cleaner lie. Simone came up behind me. Do not comment. I wasn't going to. Good. I hate that they get to tell it first. She pointed to my phone. Screenshot everything. So I did. Every post, every comment, every little performance of victimhood. I sent them to Vivian, then closed the app and went into the kitchen. Ruby was sitting at the table, carefully lining blueberries along the edge of a pancake Simone had made. Too many? She asked. I swallowed. No, baby, as many as you want. The next morning, Brielle found another way in. Ruby did not have her own phone, but she had an old iPad I used for video calls with family back when I still thought access and love were the same thing. I was packing our laundry when I heard Marianne's voice drifting from the living room. Grandma is very sad right now. We all just want your mommy to stop being angry. I moved fast. Ruby sat frozen on the sofa, iPad in her lap, eyes too wide. Did I make Grandma sad? I took the iPad gently and blocked Brielle's account, then Marianne's. No. But she sounded sad. That sadness belongs to grown-ups who made grown-up choices. It is not yours to carry. Ruby looked down at Finn. I needed a place. I knelt in front of her. That was all you did. You needed a safe place. You did nothing wrong. She nodded, but not fully, not yet. Later that day, Andrea Pike from HR emailed about my emergency leave documentation. I called Janet Ruiz instead of spiraling. Janet listened, then said I had the right to take time, but to keep everything clean. Red tag, motel receipt, attorney letter, screenshots. She also reminded me firmly that Ruby's adoption file was solid. If your family tries to imply anything about how Ruby came to you, Janet said, remember the record: transfer of case, separate worker, homesteady, court approval. You did this correctly. Correctly. I held on to that word. That afternoon, a message came from Nora Whitcomb, my parents' longtime neighbor. Mrs. Whitcomb was 71, a widow who still watered her roses by hand and knew every car that stopped on our block. She wrote that she did not want to get involved, then proceeded to get involved in the way only decent people do when silence starts to feel like complicity. She had seen an appraiser at the house months ago, then a man in a gray suit, then a woman with a notary bag. She remembered because Brielle had been outside on the phone afterward, laughing and saying, "Refinance saved us again." I read the message twice. Refinance. No one had told me about a refinance. I forwarded it to Vivian. Her reply came 1 hour later. I'm pulling preliminary property records. Do not contact your family about this. That instruction sat in my stomach like a stone. By evening, Olivia had given Ruby a drawer in her room. Just one small plastic drawer under a shelf, but Ruby stared at it like Olivia had handed her a deed. "You can keep Finn's brush here," Olivia said. "He doesn't have a brush. Then we'll make him one." Ruby smiled for the first time since the porch. I was watching them from the hallway when Vivian called. Her voice was different, still calm but tighter. "Eloine, I pulled the preliminary records." I stepped into Simone's kitchen. "What did you find?" "There is a mortgage recorded against the Mercer property from 2024, North Coast Community Bank." My mouth dried up. "That's impossible." "It lists signatures from Marianne Mercer, Walter Mercer, Brielle Mercer, and you." The room seemed to tilt, not like the earthquake, but close enough that I put a hand on the counter. "I never signed a mortgage." "I know," Vivian said. "How would my name be on that?" A pause. "That's what I was afraid of." I looked toward the hallway, where Ruby was laughing softly at what Olivia had said. The sound should have comforted me. Instead, it made the cold inside me spread. Because this was no longer about a couch. It was no longer about a den, or a cruel sentence, or a family that could not make room for a child. Somewhere, on a legal document tied to the house they claimed I had no right to disturb, my name had been used without my consent. And for the first time since the red tag went on my own front door, I understood that the foundation cracking under us was not made of wood or concrete. It was made of lies. Chapter 4. The Signature I Never Wrote. Vivian's office felt colder the next morning, though maybe that was only because I knew what was waiting on her desk. The mortgage package from North Coast Community Bank sat between us in a neat stack, held together by a black binder clip. It looked ordinary, almost boring, the way dangerous paperwork often does. No raised voice, no slammed door, just white pages, black ink, and the kind of fraud that could sit quietly in a filing cabinet for years if no one ever thought to look. Vivian turned the top pages slowly. "This is the 2024 refinance." I sat across from her with my hands folded in my lap because I did not trust them to do anything else. She slid one page toward me. "Here." My name was there. Eloine Mercer. The signature looked almost right. That was the worst part. It had the slope of mine, the loop in the E, the long tail at the end, but it was too clean, too flat, like it had been lifted from somewhere else and placed where it did not belong. "That's not my signature." I didn't think so. Vivian pointed to the lower corner of the page. "And this is the notary block." I leaned closer. "Diane Haskins, Notary Public, State of California." The document claimed I had appeared in person in Santa Rosa on August 14, 2024, presented identification, and signed in front of her. For a moment, I could not breathe. I wasn't there. Vivian nodded once. "Where were you?" "At work." "You're sure?" "I'm positive." The memory came fast and sharp. August 14th, 2024, an emergency placement, a 12-year-old boy sleeping in a conference room chair because there were no foster beds available until morning. I had stayed late with Janet Ruiz, eating vending machine pretzels and filling out notes with a headache behind my eyes. I worked a double shift that day, Napa County Family Services. There should be badge logs, schedule confirmation, case notes, maybe camera footage. Vivian pulled a yellow legal pad closer. "Good. Get all of it." "This is more than a bad signature, isn't it?" Her expression did not change, but her voice lowered. "If this notary certified that you appeared in person when you did not, we are no longer talking about a paperwork mistake. We are talking about notarized forgery." The words settled over the room. Notarized forgery. It sounded too clean for what it was, too professional for a theft done inside a family. I thought of my mother standing on the porch saying the house was full. I thought of Brielle saying, "Your little situation." I thought of my father looking away. And now, under all of that, my name had been used to secure debt I never agreed to. Vivian began marking pages. I'm sending a demand to North Coast Community Bank for a fraud review. I want the full loan file, identification records, broker communications, and notary journal entries. Do not call your parents. Do not call Brielle. Do not warn them beyond what they already know. I don't want to sound dramatic. You are not being dramatic. I keep thinking there has to be an explanation. There may be, but innocent explanations usually do not require fake appearances before a notary. I called Janet from the parking lot. She answered on the third ring. Elowen, is Ruby safe? She's safe. I need something from work records. August 14th, 2024. Badge logs, schedule confirmation, case notes, anything proving I was at the agency. There was a pause, then her voice became all supervisor, steady and precise. What happened? My name is on a mortgage I never signed. Janet exhaled once. Send me the date in writing. I'll get what I can through proper channels. Thank you. And Elowen, yeah? Don't let them feel guilty for proving where you were. I sat in my car for a minute after the call ended, staring at the steering wheel. Guilt was exactly the shape this thing kept trying to take. Guilt for hiring a lawyer, guilt for upsetting my mother, guilt for not making my father uncomfortable, guilt for not letting Brielle's life keep expanding into every room until there was no air left for anyone else. But guilt did not sign that mortgage. Someone did. By the end of the week, Vivian had more names. Caleb Rhodes, 46, mortgage broker. He had handled the refinance. He also had a connection to Derek Nolan through a local business networking group. The kind of men in tight blazers talked about passive income over bad coffee. Derek had been trying to launch some online consulting course around that time. Motivation, branding, leadership, none of it clear enough to explain why he needed money, only clear enough to explain why he did not have any. The refinance had not been small. Vivian walked me through only what I needed to know. The Mercer house had been used like an ATM for years. Credit cards paid down, then run up again, basement renovation, game room equipment, Brielle's car repairs, Derek's business expenses, late fees rolled into new debt, all of it wrapped in words like family stability and preserving the house. All while I had been sending $250 every month. I almost laughed when Vivian said it, not because anything was funny, but because my body needed somewhere to put the shock. I didn't need my help with repairs, I said. They needed me to help maintain the illusion. Vivian closed the file. That is not a legal term, but yes. The calls started again that night. First, my mother. Vivian will respond, I said, before she could get momentum. Elowen, listen to me. Sometimes families sign things together and forget. Your father handled most of the paperwork. You were sent documents. I never signed a mortgage. You might not remember. I would remember appearing before a notary in Santa Rosa on a day I was working in Napa. Silence. Then softer. You're making this sound criminal. No, Mom, the paperwork is. She made a wounded sound. I don't recognize you. I looked toward Simone's living room where Ruby was sitting beside Olivia, carefully brushing lint from Finn's tail with her fingers. That's because I stopped shrinking. I ended the call. Brielle tried next. You have always wanted to punish us for being happy. Brielle, my name is on a mortgage I never signed. Maybe you signed something years ago. You never paid attention to family things. I paid $250 every month to family things. That was voluntary. So was letting Ruby sleep on the floor, apparently. She snapped. "This is why people don't tell you things. You twist everything." "No, I document everything." That shut her up for half a second. Then my father called. His voice sounded older than it had 3 days ago. "Your mother is not sleeping. Ruby didn't sleep after you turned her away. That was a mistake. Was the mortgage a mistake too?" He breathed into the phone. "I don't know what happened with that." "Then say that. Say you don't know. Don't tell me Mom didn't mean it. Don't tell me Brielle is stressed. Don't tell me I'm escalating. Your children are scared. Brielle's children. They think they might lose their home." I closed my eyes. Ruby thought she never had one. He was quiet. "She's a child," he said finally. "She'll forget." "No, Dad. Children don't forget being unwanted. They learn to make themselves smaller." He said nothing. That was what Walter Mercer did best. He disappeared while still standing there. I needed air after that call, so Simone took Olivia and Ruby to a beginner Aikido class the next morning and told me to come watch instead of sitting alone with legal documents. The studio smelled faintly of rubber mats and lemon cleaner. Children moved in uneven lines, learning how to fall without hurting themselves, how to stand balanced, how not to meet force with force. Ruby stood beside Olivia, uncertain at first, fin tucked safely in my tote bag. The instructor showed her how to place her feet. "Strong base," he said. "You don't have to push. Just don't let yourself be pushed over." Ruby glanced at me. I smiled, though my throat hurt. "That's it, baby." She fell twice. The second time, she got up faster. Watching her, I understood that I was learning the same thing. I did not have to scream. I did not have to shove back. I only had to stop letting them knock me down and call it family. The first hearing at Sonoma County Superior Court was scheduled sooner than I expected. Not the final battle, Vivian warned me, but the first time everyone would have to stop performing on Facebook and speak through documents. Judge Harold Benton was 62, silver-haired, and unreadable. The courtroom was smaller than television makes courtrooms look. Beige walls, wood benches, fluorescent lights, no drama except what people carried in with them. My family arrived together. Marianne wore a soft cardigan, the kind she chose when she wanted to look fragile. Walter looked exhausted. Brielle had dressed like a woman betrayed by her own sister. Pale blouse, damp eyes, chin lifted. Derek stood behind her in a blazer he had no reason to wear. Their attorney argued that I had not lived in the Mercer house for years, that my parents had maintained it, that the property was emotionally and practically their home. He implied, without quite saying it outright, that I was using legal technicalities to punish an aging couple over a family disagreement. Vivian rose slowly. "My client is not asking for anything beyond her recorded ownership interest. She is a tenant in common. She contributed monthly to maintenance for years. She served notice properly. If the occupants wish to keep the property, they may buy out her share. If they cannot, partition is the statutory remedy." Clean, precise, no porch, no tears. Then she introduced the mortgage issue. Not as an accusation screamed across the room, but as a fact the court could not ignore. A 2024 refinance, a signature my attorney stated I disputed, a notary block claiming I appeared in Santa Rosa on August 14, 2024, badge logs and case records placing me at Napa County Family Services that same day. Judge Benton leaned forward slightly. For the first time, my mother's face changed. Brielle looked down. Derek stopped pretending to check his phone. The judge did not declare anyone guilty. That was not what this hearing was for. But he looked at the notary block, then at the proof Vivian handed over, and said words that made the room go still. "This raises a serious question of possible forgery. I want the complete loan file from North Coast Community Bank produced. Possible forgery. There it was, spoken by someone they could not guilt trip. In the hallway afterward, Brielle came at me before Vivian could step between us. You're destroying this family over a child who isn't even blood. The words were ugly, but what shocked me was how easily they came to her. I looked at her, really looked. Ruby is my daughter. The fact that you still don't understand that is why we're here. Brielle's mouth opened, but Vivian touched my elbow. We're done. We walked away. By the next day, Brielle had deleted half her Facebook posts. The new one was vaguer. Legal systems can be cruel to families. Some of the relatives who had called me cold suddenly had nothing to say. Nora Whitcomb messaged that 2 people from the bank had been at my parents' house. Caleb Rhodes had been contacted. Diane Haskins, the notary, apparently told someone she did not remember that signing clearly. Vivian worked faster after that. North Coast Community Bank did too, once their own liability came into view. They requested my work records formally. Janet helped provide what she could. The bank reviewed the identification copies, the notary entry, the broker communications. Then Vivian called me late on a Thursday. Ruby was asleep in Olivia's room, Finn beside her pillow. Simone was washing mugs in the sink. I stepped into the hallway to answer. Eloan, I knew from her voice. What did they find? The bank has determined your signature is not valid. The notary verification is under review, and they are treating the file as potential mortgage fraud. I leaned against the wall. And my family? If the fraud clause is enforced, the loan may be called. They also cannot buy out your share without resolving the mortgage issue. I looked through the cracked door at Ruby, sleeping under a borrowed blanket in a borrowed room, finally peaceful, because strangers had made space where blood had not. Vivian's voice softened just slightly. They didn't just shut the door on Ruby, they built that door on a forged signature. I closed my eyes. For weeks, I thought I was the one pushing the story forward, hiring the lawyer, canceling the transfer, answering the calls, walking into court. But standing there in Simone's hallway, listening to the quiet proof arrive one document at a time, I understood something else. The truth had started moving on its own, and it did not need me to raise my voice. Chapter 5. Every wall, every room, every inch. In the weeks after that call, everything became quieter and heavier at the same time. Vivian told me not to confuse accountability with revenge. North Coast Community Bank had opened its fraud investigation. Caleb Rhodes, the mortgage broker, had been contacted. Diane Haskins, the notary who claimed I had appeared in person on a day I was working in Napa, was under review. The district attorney might get the file eventually, but Vivian was clear about my role. You are not required to chase criminal punishment, she said. Your job is to protect your legal interests and your daughter. I held on to that because some nights guilt still tried to crawl back in. It came in my mother's voice, tired and wounded in voicemails I did not answer. We're still your parents, Eloan. It came in my father's short text messages. I wish things had been different. It came in Brielle's posts, softer now, less specific. Legal systems can be cruel to families. But none of them ever wrote, I'm sorry we hurt Ruby. Not once. And that absence became its own answer. The Mercers tried to buy me out, at least that was what they told Vivian, but trying and being able to are not the same thing. The mortgage balance, the late fees, the penalties, the refinance history, all of it had turned the house into something much weaker than the family legacy they kept talking about. They did not own safety, they owned debt with a porch light. Still, I had moments when I almost folded. One afternoon, I drove past the Santa Rosa neighborhood after meeting Vivian. I did not stop. I just slowed near the corner where I could see the maple tree in the front yard. For a second, I remembered my grandfather sitting under it with a glass of iced tea, letting me help shell peas into a metal bowl. I remembered the rare good things, because grief is unfair that way. It brings receipts for tenderness right when you need to stay angry. Then I went back to Simone's house and found Ruby sitting on Olivia's bedroom floor, holding Finn in her lap. "Do you think your house likes me?" she asked Olivia. Olivia looked confused in that honest way children do. Houses don't choose. People do. I stood in the hallway and felt the last soft place in me harden into something useful. This was not about making my parents suffer. This was about making sure my daughter never again believed she had to be chosen by people who treated her like an inconvenience. Judge Harold Benton granted the court-appointed sale after my family failed to produce funds for a buyout, and the mortgage issue made continued informal control of the property impossible. Paul Keene, the realtor assigned by the court, visited the Mercer house on a windy Tuesday morning. I did not go inside. Vivian said I did not need to. But Nora Whitcomb from across the street later told me what she saw. Paul Keene walked through with a clipboard while Marianne watched from the behind the living room curtains. Walter sat on the front steps for nearly half an hour, hands folded, staring at the driveway. Brielle cried in the yard, loud enough for neighbors to hear, not because she was sorry, Nora said, but because she kept saying this was unfair. Derek was not there. By then, he had started disappearing for days at a time. His home office door, the one that mattered more than Ruby's place to sleep, was apparently standing open, half his things gone. A for sale sign went in the lawn before the end of the week. When Vivian sent me the listing, I stared at the photos longer than I should have. The living room sofa looked smaller than I remembered. The den looked ordinary. The basement game room looked cluttered and dim. Rooms that had once felt powerful enough to reject me now looked like walls and carpet and bad lighting. Just a house. That realization hurt and freed me at the same time. My mother sent one final long message after the sign went up. "You are taking away the only home your father and I have left. I hope one day Ruby understands what you did to her grandparents." I read it twice, then deleted it. Not because it did not hurt, it did, but because she had done it again. Even then, she tried to put the weight on Ruby. My father's last message was shorter. "I wish things had been different." I typed 3 different replies, then erased them all. Different was not an apology. Different did not name what happened. Different did not open the door that night. Different did not tell my daughter she had done nothing wrong. So I said nothing. This time, my silence was not fear. It was a boundary. The house sold for $642,000. On paper, that sounded like a victory. In real life, numbers know how to humble everyone. The remaining mortgage balance, late fees, penalties, court costs, legal fees, and sale expenses devoured almost everything. The house my parents called legacy had been hollowed out by years of refinances, credit cards, basement renovations, Brielle's emergencies, Derek's business dreams, and the quiet assumption that I would keep sending maintenance money forever without asking questions. When Vivian called with the final accounting, her voice was gentle but direct. "After everything is paid, your share comes to $27,400. I sat at Simone's kitchen table, the same place where I had found the deed. "That's it? That's it." It was not a fortune. It was not movie revenge money. It was not enough to change my life in the way people imagine court cases do. But it was enough. Between insurance, the repair schedule, and my savings, that $27,400 paid off the last of the mortgage on my bungalow in Napa County, the house with the red tag, the house Ruby had asked if it was broken, the house I had bought with tired paychecks and stubborn hope. The Mercer house had no room for my daughter. Its final piece gave her a home that belonged to us completely. Karma did not arrive with thunder. It arrived in logistics. Marianne and Walter moved into a studio apartment on the edge of Santa Rosa. Brielle picked up 2 part-time jobs and stopped posting family quotes for a while. Derek left before the sale closed, taking his laptop, his ring light, and whatever was left of his motivational brand. The man who needed an office more than my child needed a couch vanished the moment there was no house left to hide inside. Brielle eventually returned to Facebook with quotes about forgiveness. She never mentioned the mortgage. She never mentioned the notary. She never mentioned Ruby. I did not celebrate any of it. That surprises people when I say it, but it is true. I did not dance in my kitchen. I did not drive past their studio. I did not send one final message. What I felt was not joy. It was the strange lightness of setting down a bag I had carried since childhood without realizing how heavy it was. The repairs on my bungalow finished in early summer. The city inspector came back, checked the foundation work, the reinforced wall, the new back door frame, and finally cleared the red tag. He peeled the notice from my front door in one clean motion. Ruby stood beside me, thin under one arm. "Can we go in now?" I looked at the doorway, then at her. "Yes, baby, we can go in." She stepped inside slowly, like she was entering someone else's house. The living room smelled like fresh paint and sawdust. The crack by the window was gone. The kitchen cabinet doors had been replaced. Her bedroom was painted a soft blue she had picked from a sample card at the hardware store because it looked like quiet sky. She stopped in the hallway. "Is this really ours?" I knelt in front of her. Every wall, every room, every inch. Her eyes moved toward her bedroom. "Even my room?" "Especially your room." She ran then, not fast, but free. She put Finn on the pillow, placed her crayons on the desk, and taped a handmade sign to the door. "Welcome home." The letters leaned in different directions. The tape was crooked. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Healing did not happen all at once. It never does. Ruby still asked before taking the last cookie for a while. She still folded her pajamas and tucked them under her pillow the first week, like someone might tell her she had to leave quickly. But slowly, she stopped carrying her backpack from room to room. She left crayons on the table. She let Finn stay in bed during breakfast. And she kept going to Aikido with Olivia. I watched from the bench as Ruby learned how to fall and stand again. Strong base, soft knees, balance before force. She was still small, still cautious, but there was a new steadiness in her. She did not have to push anyone down to prove she belonged. She only had to know where her feet were. I was learning that too. One evening, a truck rolled past our street, heavy enough to rattle the windows. My whole body tensed before I could stop it. For a second, I was back in March, dust in the air, plates breaking, Ruby asking if our house was broken. But the walls held. The floor stayed still. From her room, Ruby called out, "Mom, we're okay, right?" I stood in the hallway and looked at the new door frame, the painted walls, the little sign still taped to Ruby's door. "Yes, baby, we're okay." My family said there was no space for my daughter, but in the end, that house proved something they never meant it to prove. I had never been as outside as they wanted me to feel. My name was there the whole time, buried in paperwork they hoped I would never read, tied to a house they used like a throne until the truth pulled it apart. They said I destroyed my family. I think the family destroyed itself the night it shut the door on a 6-year-old holding a stuffed fox and asking for a place to sleep.